So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders, their backgrounds, their successes, their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this afternoon, I'm delighted to have with us Aaron McWilliam, who's CEO of PropCall, Novex Facilities Management, and Emergency Hero. So, firstly, Aaron, thank you for spending some time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, your businesses, what you do, how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Great to be here. Yeah, I'm Aaron. I run my sort of first business was a company called PropCall, which is a call handling service specifically for the property management market. That then spun off into a couple of extra ventures. One of them being an on-site services business in Novex Facilities Management that does
Yep,
reactive repairs, FM works, recurring works, that kind of stuff. And alongside all that, with that huge network of contractors, we then created Emergency Hero, which, to describe in a nutshell, is like Uber for emergency callouts.
love it. Great. I could immediately see the need for that. What a great niche in the market to find and pick. Wonderful. And so just following up on that, what makes a great client for you? What are your sort of A grade clients, whether that's across the group or individually, Aaron?
I think for PropCall and Novex in particular, property management businesses ranging from small independent estate agents or landlords with a few properties, right the way up to your national companies that have thousands of units under management. There isn't a specific type of property management; it's all of them. So
Yep.
if you're a block manager, student lettings business, residential lettings, we can service it. And then Novex can obviously do any on-site work that they need as well.
Brilliant.
So yeah, both are sort of geared more towards the property management sector.
Brilliant. It feels like a great example of a business that has developed into serving its client community more and more, and obviously building a business based on that. So
Yeah,
fabulous.
it kind of actually Novex I would describe probably as an externalization of a department within the business to
Yes.
from its own standalone. We recognise that the for me one of the big things in running a business is people need to know when they say your name, what you do, and what
Yep.
problem you solve. Having the on-site services as part of prop call started to get a bit confusing for people. They're not
Yes.
just the call answering service; they're also plumbers, electricians. So we brought that out into its own brand and sort of externalized that, and that was a really positive decision in the end.
That's a really good point. Just picking up on that. So it's helping because it helps our clients differentiate, doesn't it? We may be the same business, but this is what service do I want right now?
Yeah,
And confusion kills sales. It right there then, doesn't it? If I'm not quite sure
100%.
what it is. Perfect. Oh, thank you. Well, Aaron, maybe if we could start by looking back a little bit, and you could tell us a little bit more about your background, how you got into business, and why this particular one for you or ones.
It's a funny story actually. This business prop call to start with as the first business, as all good business ventures do, started over a pint.
Brilliant.
Good friend of mine runs a student lettings and block management company. Was having a groan about all the out of hours issues that they have, students locking themselves out or break-ins, that kind of stuff, and really just picked my brain on how I would potentially set up a contact center for property management because my background was sort of telecoms and connectivity.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, we sort of threw the idea together, and he said, "Well, if you can deliver that, I'll be your first client. So shall
Brilliant.
we do it?" Um, I actually put him off for about 6 months before COVID then sort of made the decision for me that actually, yeah, this is a good opportunity to start a business with an existing client
Yep.
and learn a new industry. And yeah, the first 3 months was just that one client who thankfully wouldn't fire us if we made a mistake. Um, and then yeah, opened the door to the wider market after 3 months when we were confident in the service and the business took off from there. We went from me and 3 people to me plus 56, which is yeah, crazy. And then across the group now we're at about 90 employees in the 5 years.
Amazing. In 5 years.
Yeah.
Eh, well done. That's some rapid growth. My first business, I think we got to 100 and something plus contracts, but that was over 10 years. So, and it's an interesting thing. I've spoke to a few people about this and to my shame almost is going through stages of, the first, as you say, 3 people, 8, 10, 20 people. You know them, their
Yeah.
partners, their families, their dogs, you know everything. But as you grow, it becomes more difficult to know people as personally as as probably we should, even
Yeah.
at, but have you found that yourself?
Yeah, it's funny that because I often joke with one of the directors for the business now was one of our very first employees, and he maintains quite a close relationship with a lot of the team members, in sort of work social events and that kind of stuff. He's often with
Yes.
them, partying and having a great time. I feel like because we grew so quickly, I sort of missed out on that period that most business owners get, where in those first few years, they are close to the team, they are getting drunk with them all the time and having a good time. And we just grew that quickly that I've always sort of had a bit of a, I guess, a distance in that, which is a shame in some respects, but it's a sign of such rapid growth in terms of the business that, it's a great problem to have.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yes, it's as you said, it's got an upside. Interestingly enough, one of my leadership heroes is Sir Ernest Shackleton. You may not aware. It was a Arctic explorer, so polar explorer. At the same time as Captain Scott, again, you may not be aware, Captain Scott of the Antarctic, who's quite famous. Interesting enough, famous. He died and all his men died. Whereas actually, Ernest Shackleton survived, although he had a lot of challenges to survive. But one of the things that was interesting in his leadership style was he and his officers, because it was very much a sort of a military structure and a naval structure. He and his officers would be willing to do whatever it took at any point in time. That didn't mean they always did it, but pull it. Sales needs to go really quickly. They may or may not get involved.
Yeah,
So they always felt they would muck in, but he was always keen to have the discipline of the officers ate in the canteen, the officers ate separately to the men, and
yeah,
it wasn't a better or worse. It was a distance thing, because ultimately the leader has to make tough decisions sometimes,
yeah.
and being too friendly can be quite difficult, I think. And so it's interesting that was enforced on you rather than did I? But yeah, fascinating. So looking back over that time, and obviously that rapid growth. I'm guessing there's a few challenges you've had to overcome. What some of the biggest issues and challenges you've had to overcome?
I'd say a couple of things really. Cash flow is always the biggest one when you bootstrap a business.
Yeah.
We did that, although we had a first client, we didn't have investors or anything like that. So we did
Yes.
literally bootstrap it.
Yeah.
And growing rapidly and actually growing profitably are two very different things. And it
Yes.
took us a little bit of time. It took me in particular a little bit of time to figure that out in terms of you write down on a spreadsheet, oh, well, I've got these clients paying me this much. Great. Well, that means I'm making this much when you deduct staff costs and blah, blah, blah. And that sounds quite simple. There's all sorts of things that you're not thinking about in your naivety of, national insurance contributions and sick pay and all that kind of stuff. So growing so rapidly, we did have a bit of a cash flow pinch in the beginning. We figured that out eventually anyway.
Yeah.
And it's that sort of tied into a period where we got to a size where it was starting to be a bit of an operational strain, and we were starting to have a higher turnover than we were used to.
Right.
And we had to, I guess, have a couple of months of letting it burn and letting the performance on the phones not be so good in order to get the right people in, rather
Yeah.
than doing what we were doing before, which was just throw a body at it and then
Yeah.
throw another body at it and then throw another body at it. So yeah, that was probably the operationally the biggest challenges that we faced.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, isn't it? It's the from it, I know it's obvious, but it's sort of it's like it's better to have a gap than a poor performer in that
I
realm,
know
isn't
that expression. I know the way you want to word that.
it? Yeah, okay, yeah. Is that
Yeah,
and that's it. Is it's better to know it's that and then deal with that, whether that's with
yeah.
your clients, let them know, look, we're going to be slightly down because we've. But yeah, it's so difficult when you've got people in place that you expect to do a job and aren't doing a job.
Yeah, I think a lot of it for us was actually not necessarily the intentions of the people, but just the quality of our recruitment and our assessment of the people's capability to handle the strain. And the strain that was coming with the role at the time because of the growth was too high, and we didn't realize that because we'd been so used to operating at such a high speed. So then we decided, take a step back, let it almost let it burn for a little bit, and put three people in that role rather than one. And hopefully what will happen then is at least two of them will stay, and there's they're sharing the strain of the extra work
Great.
we're taking. And that was difficult for me as owner operator, because you don't want your service standards to slip,
No,
especially in those first few years. There's no room for error.
no.
So it was a very nervy time for me personally, but
Yes.
it was one of the best decisions we made.
Yeah, no, yeah, no, I'm sure interesting. I've got a friend who works in recruitment, and one of the first things he says when somebody brings him in, he says, "Who am I replacing?" Okay, and they've left. Yeah, they've left. So his question is, so did you recruit badly or manage badly?
Yeah,
And it is because it isn't about the individual. Most individuals can perform. It is about our responsibility. Did we pick the right people, and did we then support them and help them? And the challenge is when you overlap that with high growth and the time challenges. I mean, growth costs two key things. I suggest money and time.
yeah,
It's how we manage that. If we don't manage it, then we have real problems. And
yeah.
so, yeah, it's great that you've managed to overcome that. And so, whether from the challenges you've overcome and faced, or the successes you've had, what are some of the key learnings you have about growing a successful business, especially fast growth? Perhaps it would be relevant here.
Um, I think for me, the biggest thing I've learned over the years, because obviously, as you can tell, I've started a few different businesses over the years now, and I've kind of gotten used to starting
Yes.
ventures now. And I think that the big learning for me is just that execution is one of the most important things in business. I think a lot of people get tied up in having the perfect process ready for a business or the perfect brand or the perfect everything. And actually, a lot of the time, it's just execute it in, a 70% capacity of what you think it's capable of doing, figure out some of the challenges and some of the actual problems that you're going to be solving, but also some of the things that maybe you didn't think about in starting that
Yeah.
business, and then refine the model. Nobody starts a business that's perfect and then just goes on to be a unicorn and delivers the exceptional growth they expected. Actually, a lot of the best businesses, they kind of throw it together as a half-baked idea, test it on the market gives them feedback, they refine it, and then
Yeah.
they sort of grow it from there. So yeah, I think for me, learning how to execute things and be comfortable in not quite winging it, but being fluid enough to be able to sit in the grey areas that don't have a process and just be able to figure stuff out as you go and then build those processes as you go.
Yes. Funny enough, it reminds me. I talked to a colleague quite a few years ago, and I'm quite a visual person, so I relate to things like movies and stuff, and what I see on the TV or videos that I watch. And if you remember, I used to talk about fast growth. Like there's a scene in one of the Wallace and Gromit movies. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but it's the Wrong Trousers, where
Yeah,
there's a chase at the end between the penguin and Gromit, and
yeah,
he ends up on the train set going around the lounge,
yeah,
and he goes to and he looks forward, and the tracks run out,
yeah.
and as he goes he picks
Starts
up this
building it.
and he starts building it, and I said that's Rathco's business for me. It's like, yeah, one track at a time. It's just bang 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 bang
Yeah,
bang, bang, and it has to be like that sometimes. It's absolutely. I wouldn't undermine ever the value of goals and plans, but
yeah.
sometimes it is just about um, uh, uh, just make it as you go along, then making it right.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. As long as you care about the end, product, the making it up as you go along, people often feel an element of guilt. But actually, if your intention is that you will service that client in the way that you've promised to service, well, they almost don't really care how that ends up happening in the background. So that's more
yes.
of a you thing than a them thing.
Nice. That's a nice differentiation. Yeah, bang on, because the plan is about where we're headed. As long as the quality of the delivery is. But interesting enough, we have one of the things we work with people on is a process to grow a business
Yeah,
that can also work without you. The four stages of mastery, which is like, don't even think about growth until you've got these at least mastered, are destination where we're headed, at least the long term time, because as I say, time could be the limiting factor. Numbers, primarily financial, but it can be others. But obviously, again, cash being one of those numbers. If that runs out, we're struggling. But the last one is we call it delivery mastery. So that's the execution part of what we
yeah,
do. Quality, consistently be able to deliver that from day one. If we don't have that, then scaling is a problem. We're just going to burn through potential clients quite quickly.
yeah,
Um,
100%.
Systemization across the rest of the business can happen later. It's
Yeah.
just about, as you say, the execution level, which is fascinating. And Aaron, I think you're aware we're a business coaching organisation. I'm keen to know who the best coaches you've ever worked with, whether that's business, sport, or life in general. Who's had the most impacts on you?
Actually, an action coach. Remember, it's a chap called Lawrence. Lawrence Good. He was,
Brilliant,
revolutionary for us, really.
brilliant.
Think we worked with him for about just shy of a year, probably about 9 months.
Good.
And a lot of the models that we worked with Lawrence on, and a lot of the sort of structure and the dashboards and the vision orbits and that kind of stuff, are actually still very much how we operate the business
Brilliant.
now. It's very much part of our operating system. I'm constantly banging the drum to people about sort of business coaching and the value to it. If I look at the investment we made in it between myself and Sarah, who's now MD, it was, the best money that we've spent on
Brilliant.
ourselves in probably the whole 5 years.
Brilliant. Well, obviously the check's in the post. Thank you for saying that. But no, I mean, I urge people just to have somebody that that can hold them accountable. It's a coaching. Interesting enough, the good thing about coaching, and I love the process is, we know coaching works in sports, been around for a long time, and therefore helping people operate at high performance with the education and knowledge they need is a bit of a no-brainer in sport. Therefore, it should be in business too, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, 100%. And I just think that, seeing the sort of things from an outside perspective a lot of the time is really useful. When you're in the thick of it, you sort of, you're distracted by the internal workings of your business, and you're not seeing the bigger picture.
Yes.
I think coaching really helps you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, and then start to work on those sort of core pillars, as you said, that then means, and sometimes some of those learnings are, I'm not the right person for that bit, so I need to plug that gap. Similar
Yep.
to what I was saying earlier, like execution being my main thing. Give me that pillar of the business and the revenue driving all day. Give me anything operational and my head falls off.
Yeah.
But then Sarah, the MD,
Yeah.
who joined us a couple of years into the business, just as we got to that sort of tough period, was revolutionary in then balancing out my weaknesses in those areas,
Brilliant.
because then her strength, and the coaching especially was massive in just leveling up even Sarah's expertise in those areas and really sort of formalizing them.
Brilliant. Fabulous. Yeah, I love doing this, doing what I do, and it's just you just see the changes. And as you say, the outside looking in is so valuable. And we often say just asking dumb questions. It's often it's just the simplest questions can often be the most powerful. But just so we're clear, why are we doing it that way? Just oh,
Yeah.
so and whether it's from your coach or other areas, do you have any favorite? Have you been to any favorite quotes or sayings about business or success or life in general?
Um, I think life in general, the one that always jumps out at me is nice to be nice. And I think that's formed a big part of how I manage people, how the business operates, and how it looks after people. And that's very much, something my dad brought me up with, banging the drum on. And I don't think, I think people often believe that in business you can't be nice and you have to be ruthless and you have to be this. And I'll
Yeah,
be honest with you, I don't have the time or patience to be that ruthless. I'm too friendly, but it doesn't seem to have done me any harm. So, just
100%.
having the right intentions, I think, and being nice is, as important as some of the learnings that I've had over the years in business.
I think honestly, I think that's great, and spend a second on that because it's like nice to be nice. You're right. There is this just totally invalid belief that people in business have to be ruthless, hard, unpleasant, and it's just not true. And
Yeah,
and most of them, the challenge is most of the most successful people are nice, are great people. They don't necessarily push themselves to the front as much as some of the
yeah.
perhaps
They
less
don't
nice
throw
people.
their public persona out and be like, "Look how nice I am."
Absolutely. And yet, just for anyone watching this, your best part, just about 100 people in 5 years, and your policy is it's nice being nice. It's that's worth thinking in for me and for the people, I think.
Yeah, and I think interestingly, one of the other things that I've learned that sort of balances that out is, I would say probably my biggest learning over the last 3 years of the business has actually been the value of saying no and not feeling like you're not being nice. Because I am,
Yes.
by nature a bit of a people pleaser, and I've recognised that in the first few years of the business, probably gave up a lot of time in areas that I didn't need to, just by saying yeah, yeah, and everything's an opportunity in the early days. But as you get to a certain point, you have to learn the value of saying no. And
Yeah.
you're not just protecting your time. A lot of the time, you're actually protecting someone else's time from being wasted. So yeah, being nice is important, but also actually advocating for yourself and just make sure you're protecting your time and energy in the right areas is equally as important on that.
Yeah, I think one of the ways it's helpful from a mindset perspective to position it for our own minds is I'm letting you down if I do this for you.
Yeah,
In effect, I'm not helping you develop. If I just give you the answer or do that for you, you're not going to learn. So I'm still being nice, but I'm being nice by saying no. You do it, you work it out. I'm here to help, but go on. And it's an interesting way of helping people do things that they're not naturally
Yeah.
predisposed to do. But it is, and once it's positioned in your head, well, I'm letting you down, aren't I? Now, if I do it all for you, that feels like being nice, but you're not going to learn. You're not going to grow.
Well,
Um,
that ties into one of my boss when I did a international business degree, 4 year degree with a sandwich year based down in London for a year. And my boss at the time, a great guy called Dennis, runs a company called Awesome Events. Um, being honest, at 2021, I was a little bit arrogant, I would say. I thought I was quite good at what everything I was doing, as you do. And I was the only marketing guy in there. And I remember very vividly going to Dennis with a bit of a grumble, just moaning about something that was wrong or wasn't working or something. And I remember I got an absolute dressing down in front of the whole office. It's about 10, 15 people in the office. And his dressing down has stuck with me ever since, because he basically just said to me, Aaron, don't come to me with a problem, come with a solution. If you don't, I'm not going to bother talking to you. And that was it.
Brilliant.
And obviously, in the heat of the moment, it's, oh God, I've been told off here. You don't know what to do. But actually, that advice that is now the biggest bit of advice I give to anyone,
Great.
is because, like you say, it changes the mentality. Then, if I just give everyone the answers the minute they walk through the door with a problem, well, they're not inspiring any sort of thought process behind
No.
it. So if my own team now actually know not to come with a problem,
Brilliant.
because I will shoot them down in that way, in a nicer way than Dennis maybe did to me. But it inspires that thought process of, actually, what could I do? And even if it's wrong, you then pick apart why it's wrong or why it's maybe not the
Yeah.
best solution, and they learn from it in that way. And I
Yeah.
think that really helps people level up quicker. I think a lot of, particularly like your junior members of staff can become really, really experienced in their areas of work, just by challenging the way things work and just by actually trying to problem solve
Yes.
themselves.
Yeah, consistent challenge, I think, because it is, everything's moving so fast, especially technology, that the ability to do things differently just with technology is changing every
Yeah.
month, every week. But yeah, interesting enough, there's a book by Ken Blanchard called The One Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. Monkey being other people's problems, given what we talk about, and his proposition was, come to me, I will help you with a problem, but you have to thought at
Yeah.
least two solutions, and just that ability then to think, and the idea being, you have thought a bit out of what could it
Yeah.
be. And I think, that both ideas are absolutely valid. And it's just you need to think about it, because I meet, yeah, I meet business owners, managers, leaders regularly where they've just and they've got to take responsibility. They program their team to say, "Oh, I don't know how to do that," and they go, "All right, well, this is how
Yeah.
you do it," or "I'll do it for you,"
And
or
then you become the sort of pinch point of the business. And then
100%.
as an owner operator, you are an owner operator. And I think it's important that as you scale, you try and look to, well, how do I make myself almost redundant to the point where I'm not needed in the day to day? I'm a bonus to have. I think some of it ties into care and how much people think that, oh, someone else will only do it 50% as good as me. But I think if you're going to operate at any sort of scale and have any growth, you need to hand the reins over of that kind of stuff. And I think that, yeah, just learning to, I guess, encourage people to try and make those decisions without you then stops you becoming the pinch point within the bottleneck within a business.
Absolutely. I heard a lady called Jennifer Burns speak a couple of years ago. So she's ex CTO at Microsoft, going back a few years, but she's really, really clever woman. But she said in the US now, when they recruit, and this was in a room of business owners, it was really fascinating just seeing the reaction. She said in the US now, when they recruit C-suite executives, CEOs, CFOs, CTOs, whatever it would be, they actively test them on their ability not to do things.
Yeah.
And honestly, you could almost feel the confusion running in the room. It's like, what she said? She didn't say that. And it was, yeah, it was the idea that our job is to inspire and manage and lead other people to do things. That's our
Yeah.
job. That's the thing we do. We don't do the stuff that they do. And it's fascinating. Brilliant. Great quote. And along the same line, any favorite books or podcasts you can recommend, again, on business or success in general?
I think from a personal perspective, one of my personal favorites outside of work is a book called Willful Blindness. I think the author, if I remember rightly, was Margaret Heffernan. that one more of a personal thing. It kind of helps you with spotting maybe things that you didn't before. I
Yeah.
think one of my favorite business books, though, one that ties in nicely with work, is actually a book called The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. Um, and I found that one. You sort of touched on, Marines and sort of army teams and that kind of stuff, and it looks at not just successful businesses but successful teams and successful
Yes.
units and that kind of stuff, and compares all those sort of positive qualities and what makes them successful.
Great.
And it's a really good eye-opening book, and actually, a big part of it was reaffirming that the way we're doing things is by and large along the right track. There's some things we can improve,
Great.
um, but I found it really eye-opening to sort of, I guess, almost formalize what I thought about how we build a good team and how we sort of drive that culture within the business. So yeah, definitely recommend the Culture Code.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I'll look that up. It's not one I'm aware of yet, so I'll get that. Speaking of that, there is, and you may be aware of this book as well, but just on the same lines, there is the book called Legacy. Get it right, Legacy, and it's a book about the New Zealand All Black rugby team.
Yeah.
And their 7 points, no, only theirs, not there. It wasn't obviously Broad the Brush, but you're giving something we just mentioned earlier that one of the key rules of their culture is no dickheads, which so which perhaps comes back to what we talked about slightly earlier. But yeah, again, it's a great book just to think about how that might relate to us. But yeah, fabulous. So, still on the learning front, then, Aaron, what would you say you've learned about yourself throughout your journey so far?
Um, I think I've learned a lot more about my strengths and weaknesses, and I think as a person, and I've realised this is a personal outside of work as much as it is an in work. I am a problem solver, and
Yeah.
I'm good at fixing things, and I'm good at solving problems, whether they're technical or operational or anything like that. Give me an opportunity to put the hero cape on and deliver something. Great, I'll be able to do it. Equally, then I've learned that my weaknesses actually fall in the detail. The structure, the organization. I can put a basic structure together that's almost idiot proof, but
Yeah.
really the bits that I find boring are actually for some people are really really interesting and they enjoy.
100%.
So I think I've definitely learned a bit of about my own personality in that and my attention span.
Brilliant. Love it. Yeah, it's that was a big learning for me was that for everything I hate, there's someone there to love it. And it's not I'm not giving you something horrible to do. It's
Yeah.
horrible for me. I'm giving you something it's amazing for you to do. And when you sort of get that in your head, it really helps, doesn't it? Just go, great. Who is it would love to do this right now?
Yeah,
Um,
100%. Like I say, Sarah was one of the most critical hires for us as director when she joined, and she's now MD. And yeah, she is absolutely unbelievable at all the stuff that I am terrible at.
yeah, it's brilliant.
And but she enjoys it as well, and
Yeah,
that's a big part of it is we both enjoy the parts of the business we look after. We'll always
yeah.
pick each other's brains about the other stuff, but really we're good at doing what we do, and combined it then covers all bases.
Brilliant, brilliant. And Aaron, you may well be aware of this from obviously working with Actually before, but our key definition of a true business is a commercial profitable enterprise that works without its owners and leaders. I'm just keen to know. I mean, it feels like you're on that journey already, but what are your thoughts about that as a definition of a true business?
Yeah, we actually have this sort of rule at every layer of management within the business, but anyone who's managing, their actual job within the business is to make themselves redundant and make
Love
their
it.
own role redundant by systemizing and managing well and building a team under them that can perform without them. So
Yeah,
there's almost micro businesses within the business. And it's quite an unusual thing for people to hear at first. I will pay you more for doing less is effectively what we promote within the business. But for us, the
love it.
leaders of the business are there to lead and be there as a safety net for the team, but the team need to be delivering. Um, that doesn't always go down so well in the facilities management sector. I've learned that the way I phrase it is different within Novex as the way I do within
Right,
PropCall and Emergency Hero, because facilities management is notorious for actual redundancies.
right.
Um, big companies buy
Okay.
other companies, and
Yeah,
it's a bit of an industry where you see
yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
that. So as you can imagine, the terminology when I first brought in the head of operations, and I was like, "Oh, just make yourself redundant." She was like, "Well, that's happened to me 3 times, so I'd ideally not
Yes.
do that." I'm like, "That's not what I mean."
Yes, I can see where that would happen. Yeah, it's like, oh, what do you mean? Yes. but yeah, if you get what redundant means, it's it. I often say it's like, job is to make yourself redundant so you can move to the next level,
Yeah,
and
100%.
but yeah, I mean, that's inferred. Now that's been now just say what you just said, because I love that. I'm going to pay you more for doing less. What's a great way of describing that? It's and you're probably aware one of our definitions of leverage is ever more with ever less. So it's a great point of leverage is I want to pay you more for, yeah, it becomes less about your time and more about the value that you deliver on
Yeah,
a regular basis.
100%. 100%. I actually found when I really started stepping away from the day-to-day of the operations, it was a bit of a weird transition for me because I was quite hands-on in the first few years,
Yes,
and Sarah actually pushed me to step away from that, stop doing that. But what I then found was actually the impact that I was having just by bobbing into a meeting for 15 minutes rather than sitting the full hour. Actually, the impact I was having in those short bursts as an outsider, not in the operation, it's actually really, really beneficial. And it actually helped me understand my own value to the business and where I can add that value without being one of the people doing the doing.
brilliant.
Um, so yeah, leveraging is a huge part of it. Using the team around you and as a unit, you're much stronger than individuals. So yeah, so it's a big part of the learning curve growing a business, I think.
Yeah. Funny enough, I learned the lesson very long time ago, and I only really reconnected with it a couple of years ago. But my first job was in Manchester for a company called Ferranti Computer Systems. I was a software man originally, and sort of 6 months in, early mid 20s, whatever it would be, and we were cool. We were having a they probably call it a town hall nowadays, but basically our chairman was coming in to speak to the troops, and so we big enough site. We had a big auditorium, 500 people. Went in for 9:30, and guy is a classic 1980s, 1990s chairman of the board. A guy called Sir Derek Allen Jones. I still remember his name because he was just like he walked in, strode in, big mane of silver hair, pinstripe suit, immaculately dressed, and he gave us half an hour of the most rip roaring, it was very British, but it was like, we're break, we're British, and you can almost see, you've imagined this auditorium, you can almost see everyone's chest pumping out, and that guy in half an hour added 15, 20, 25% performance to everyone in that room in half an hour, right? That
Yeah.
that that was his job. That was his job. And the thing that I remember from it that is very much supports what we talked about. As he walked up the auditorium, I was sitting towards the end row, and I always say he turned to me. It wasn't me. It was just whoever was there. But he turned to me and went, "Off for a game of golf now." And you couldn't go anything there. Yeah, right on. You've done
Yeah,
your job. That's
fair play.
and it just really, in hindsight now, picking back that story back, it's just like the impact of that's our job. It shouldn't be measured on time. It should be measured on value and performance. And
100%.
so looking again, look. So if we now look forward a little bit, Aaron, what does the future look like for you and the group, and what are the challenges you might face, if any?
So we've started moving into focusing more on other sectors within PropCall as it's matured within sort of residential lettings and block
Yes.
management. We're also expanding more of our client base into social housing, which we have a little bit of a client base in, but like
Yep.
to grow that. And really just refining the product offering and the service offering. We don't just do out of hours, we do daytime call answering as well, which has evolved as part of the service. So that is a continued sort of structured growth plan that we've got for that business.
Yep.
As far as Novex is concerned, that's we've actually just hired a business development manager, again trying to systemize the growth. Now we've got what I would consider the company base, the culture, the staff, the clients, that kind of stuff, and really investing into growing that business now, not just within the PropCall portfolio, but actually the wider market.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, as far as Emergency Hero goes, that's more of a tech business as much as it is a sort of engineering and on-site services business. So it's got a very different flavour in terms of its challenges and its growth. But again, a lot of that is down to people and technology and just making sure that as we scale and as we look to enter new markets in that we do that in the right way. But it's all great fun. They're all growing businesses in really interesting markets.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's plenty to go at, and I guess for me, my biggest challenge is often just making sure that I focus on the right things at the right times and don't get too distracted by
Yeah,
another
yeah,
shiny
yeah. That makes perfect sense. And if you look back just about your business, if you started the businesses again, is there anything significant you do different, do you think?
think it's a tough one because the way it all landed was actually very timely and very almost cosmic timing in terms of when people joined the business. But I think if I was to start again, I would probably bring Sarah in earlier and get ahead of the curve with
Yes.
things like cash flow and profitability.
Yeah.
Because growing in that first 2 years was great and exciting, but actually, could we have done that more profitably? Probably with a little bit of structure and organization in the back end. Yeah, just recognizing, I guess, my own weaknesses and when to plug those. Maybe I think I've gotten into a habit of doing this with the other businesses. Is actually hiring early with
Great.
the belief that we will get to the revenue figures that
Yes.
we need to justify that position, rather than
Yeah.
waiting until we're at that figure. Um, because by then you can often make the wrong decision in hiring. You can often do it too late, and you've missed an opportunity actually in the background for profitability. So yeah, but for me, I think just bringing the right people in maybe earlier than initially planned would be the big one.
We've for a long time sort of advocated the idea of employ the person when you can half afford them.
Yeah,
And it's sort of just as a rule of thumb to trigger that process. Because as you say, if you wait till you can fully afford them, it's too late. And you've highlighted, especially fast growth, we tend to have to make perhaps less than optimum decisions if we absolutely need you now.
yeah,
You tend to get moved to anybody rather than the right person, and that goes back to the challenge we face. And final question: what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do that?
I think I'd already been given that at sort of 21. I think just that quote from Dennis, come with a solution, not just a
Give us a
problem. I
solution, not a
think
problem.
inside and outside of work, it's the
Yes.
biggest bit of advice I've ever had, and it changes the way I deal with everything. So yeah, always think about solutions, not just problems.
Yeah.
And I actually think it helps with maintaining a positive mental attitude as well. I think it's very easy for people to go, "Oh, I've got these problems. Oh God, it's a problem. That's a problem." But actually, if you enjoy the solving the problem, you kind of vicariously
Yeah.
end up with a very positive mental attitude anyway.
The most valuable, you're familiar, we call them flip charts in actually cases, sort of the diagrams that we use, that has been for me and for many people I work with, is the first one I learned, which was this above and below the line idea of below the line is blame, excuses, and denial.
Yeah,
And above the line is ownership, accountability, responsibility. And I think there's a phrase, if it's to be, it's up to me. It's basically, what am I going to do differently? I've got a problem. How am I going to fix it? I am now controlling my future and my outcomes and my results. And whatever I need to do to make that happen is it keeps me positive and, as you say, successful.
yeah.
Um, great advice. Um, Aaron, it's been absolutely fascinating to talk to you, and I really, congratulate you on the success you've had and clearly future successes you're going to have.
Cheers.
And for anyone that's watching that would like to get in touch with you or any of the businesses that we've talked about, what would be the best way of or ways of doing that, would you say?
For me directly, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Anyone can connect with me on there and drop me a message on there. In terms of the businesses, they've all got their own websites: propcall.com, novexfm.com, and emergencyhero.co.uk. But yeah, I'm always open to a chat on LinkedIn at any point if anyone wants to grab me directly.
Brilliant. Well, look, it'd be great to swing by another 6, 12 months and just see the next stage. Here's a question for you. Where are you going to be in 12 months?
It's a scary question, that, because we expect the turnover to have increased significantly on all the businesses. Headcount probably up by another 40 people. Primarily that being within Novex and Emergency Hero.
Yeah.
And yeah, the aim is to become the go-to in all the markets that we operate in, to almost become the default option. So we're hoping that within 12 months we're starting to look like that.
Brilliant. Well, I have very little doubt that you can achieve that. So it'd be great to see that happen and get your learnings from that next stage, because there will be, I'm sure, new learnings from that next stage of enhanced growth. But for now, thank you so much for your time.
Cheers, Chris.
Thank you.